Thank you. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner George.
Here.
Commissioner Simmons.
Aye.
Commissioner President Dardis.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Thank you. We'd ask that everybody in the room please silence your cell phones with the exception of emergency services. Next order of business is to approve the order of the agenda. Commissioners, it has been distributed and it is in your packets.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the order of the agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item E is the approval of the minutes of November 6, 2023. Again, they have been distributed. They are in the packet. Are there any additions or addendums to the minutes, Commissioners?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of November 6, 2023 as distributed. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item F is the building permits report from Planning and Zoning. It has been distributed and it is in your packets.
Make motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the building permits reports as distributed. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next order of business is our consent agenda. We have items A through F. It has been distributed and it is in your packets.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Our next order of business is on the regular agenda. The next order is the public comment. This public comment is designated, that has to be signed up by Thursday of next week. It does nothing to do with any of the other items in there. Madam Secretary, did we have anybody sign up for public comment? No. Okay. Moving on. Item number 2 is the revision of City of West Fargo Employee Handbook. We call on Sarah Gosevic, Human Resources Manager for the City of West Fargo. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, President Dardis and Commissioners. So as you know, we just did a basic revision of our employee handbook to get some updated inclusive language in there, as well as a few missing basic policies. One of those new policies being the formal grievance procedure, and the other one, leave without pay and how to handle that for our finance and payroll department. Other basic updates were done, but most of them were, like I said, inclusive language or grammatical corrections. And that's all we have. So just looking for the commission to approve these updates so that we can have an updated policy manual. This is a basic update. Again, as we plan to do a full revision in 2024 for this.
Any questions? Mrs. Gosevic? Anyone? Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the revisions of the West Fargo City Employee Handbook as presented this evening. Is there any further discussion?
I have a question, Mayor.
Please, Commissioner Simmons.
Sarah, I'm just curious, halfway down here, it talks about requests for documentation if the supervisor believes that they're not really sick. Is that something that they would still come to you first? I'm just a little afraid that would maybe get us into trouble.
So the idea there is pretty standard actual verbiage that we use there, of if you are gone 3 consecutive days, that the supervisor or management may request documentation. That documentation isn't to include the diagnosis or anything of that sort. It is simply to state that the employee was in fact in the medical provider's office.
Okay.
Any further questions or discussion? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 3 is District Number 2276, a roundabout at 9th Street West and 52nd Avenue West. Mr. Dan Hansen, City Engineer for the City of West Fargo, is presenting. The purpose of this discussion is to conduct a resolution of necessity and a public hearing to approve the resolution of insufficient protest and task order for basic services and to direct the engineer to prepare plans and specifications. Mr. Hansen, welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. In front of you tonight is Improvement District Number 2276, which, as you mentioned, does include a roundabout project for the intersection of 52nd Avenue and 9th Street. Excuse me. Wanted to just take a little bit of history on the project. I did provide a couple handouts prior to the commission meeting. One of those handouts is it's a project process diagram. This is something that I've typically brought forward in assessment district projects just to give a snapshot of where we are at in the process. Excuse me. In a little history is in 2021, there was a traffic impact study that was completed for the 52nd Avenue and 9th Street. And then in September of this year, 2023, that's when we came forth and we created the improvement district and we approved the engineer's report. Followed up in October of 2023, we authorized a resolution of necessity which sets up today's meeting and the hearing. We did have a neighborhood meeting on November 14th, last Tuesday, and that meeting was more just to discuss roundabouts, discuss the project, answer some questions to the public, and get some public concerns with regards to roundabouts. That brings us to today. Wanted to point out that there's also another, one of the other handouts is actually a map showing in red the parcels that have provided protest, letters of protest to the creation of the special assessment district. There was a total of 1,315 letters that were sent out. We received 33 official letters of protest, which that we received within the time frame. We had 8 letters that we received after Friday. Friday was the deadline for handing those in, so I just wanted to make the commission aware that we did receive another 8 letters of protest, but those came in after Friday. So again, technically by the letter of the law, they're not official letters of protest, but I did want to take into account for your consideration that we did receive an additional 8 letters. So in total, we had 41 responses received out of the 1,315 letters that were sent out. And the way that it works is it's not a number of letters that you receive with a public protest or official letters of protest. It goes on the area of parcels that have protested the creation of the improvement district. Out of the 33 official letters of protest that we received, they represent 1.7% of the area of the parcels that we had sent it out, and that's what that map that I provided represents for you. As you stated, tonight, if the commission so chooses to move forward with the project, we would approve the resolution, and then we would begin, as the flow chart shows, the issue of the order to prepare plans and specifications to the engineer that would be designing the project would be the way to move forward with the project if it moves forward under the current proposed setup. Again, with that, I would turn it over to any questions, and I know we have a public hearing where we're going to be able to get some more feedback as well.
Commissioner George.
All right, so, okay, I know we don't legally have enough to public protest, but the people are speaking on this. Okay, I know Dan saw an issue, he saw a problem, he's trying to come up with the best way to solve this problem, but the people don't want this. I've read through all the emails, it's not just about the special assessment, that's part of it. It's about what they actually believe is best for their neighborhood, best for their children, and the people don't want this. I mean, we never get this type of public feedback. The amount of emails we got and letters, and the people that are here should speak to this project that they don't want this. I know it's not the legal limit to protest it out, but we as elected officials need to listen to the people. These are our bosses. Dan is not our boss, they are, and that's who we need to listen to when we're voting for this. They don't want it. Thank you.
Quiet, please. Commissioner.
Just not to take away from what the public comments have been, but there is a silent majority that's saying that they didn't even take the effort to protest. Is something else to consider too. That there's over 90% in this district, over 1,300 people that didn't bother to protest to us. So that's something to consider too.
Anyone else have anything for Dan? No? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
At this time, we're going to go into the public hearing. Now, again, we have noted all 33 protest letters and the 8 letters that were late coming in. We have included them in the commissioner's packets. Just so you all understand that if you stepped up and wanted a notification to make sure that we were paying attention, they are included in the conversation. So we are in a public hearing. The purpose of the public hearing was to review those written protests that we had, and that's what we're doing now. But out of respect for you, the folks that have taken time out of their busy days in their lives, is there anyone that would like to speak on regard to this? And I'm going to ask that you keep your comments to at least, we have a lot of folks here, so I'm going to ask for, Madam Secretary, start your clock at 2 minutes, please. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Kelly Schmidt, and I am a new resident of the city of West Fargo. And I'd like to thank you and your department heads for the welcome and the well service that we do receive. I agree with you, Commissioner, that I believe that there are several folks in our neighborhood that don't typically understand the process, that they have to specifically write a letter, and that their emails, they believe, represent their protest and that they have followed through. We've only been in the neighborhood for a year, but I can attest as we continue to see additional assessments come our way that we're a community that needs the opportunity to be heard and the community in the neighborhood that needs the opportunity for a pause. Right now in my home, I'm over $30,000 of special assessments right now, and that does not include the Cheyenne River project. It does not include the overlay project that we heard about in the Fargo Forum last week. And we know that your jobs are difficult, and I respect that. I have lived in the world of property tax as a former state treasurer for the North Dakota state for 16 years, so when they didn't want to appreciate your answer, they came to us for ours. But I really respect your job, but I ask you, please pause and give us an opportunity to take a deep breath. I know it was a hard vote. Originally, I think it was 3-2 when I read the minutes. So I would just ask you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Schmidt.
Can we ask any questions?
Do you,
Dan have a
I wanted
comment.
to ask a question.
one moment, please. Dan, did you have a,
If I could just add some.
please?
Thank you, Commissioner President Dartis and Commissioners. Based on that feedback, I just wanted to provide additional context that we accepted emails and written letters of the numbers that I gave before. Anybody that emailed us protest, we included that as a written protest. So all emails were included with those numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Gentleman behind Mrs. Schmidt there. Yes, sir. Good evening and welcome. Please state your name.
Alan Boltman, I would like you to put a pause on this or cancel it out until we can look at something better, because I feel that it doesn't meet the standards for safety for the children. Most people I talk to in the area, if they do anything, they'd like to go to stoplights. I understand you still got to pay for them, and if something happens later down the line, hopefully they could sell the stoplights to another corner or something. But people I've talked to feel that this is not sufficient for what we need, and we don't need these extra specials going into effect for something we don't need at this time.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Any questions, commissioners? Any of the, Commissioner Simmons?
I would
Gentlemen,
like,
sir.
thank you, Mayor. I would just like to, when the public comes up, like Mr. Schmidt, welcome, by the way. I haven't seen you since you moved to West Fargo, so thanks for coming here. I'd like to know, the question is it the special assessments that you're against, or is it the actual roundabout? Because there's a difference. We have to do something. So I'd like in the future, to come up with some options, but is it, when you come up, could you please say, is it the assessments, or is it the actual roundabout that or both? Could be both, I don't know, but I'd like to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone additional that would like to speak, please? In addition to your name, please state your address also, of where you live. Thank you, welcome.
Thanks. I'm Ryan Leach, 777 Albert Drive West is the address. I'm against the special assessments portion of it. Like the roundabout, they had good evidence at the public hearing, but it was kind of conflicting. But I've been in my house for 3 years now. There's been assessment after assessment after assessment in just 3 years. Like, is there some sort of city cap? Like, do you guys stop after a certain amount, or do you just keep going every single year? Like, how does that process work for someone who's new to homeowning?
Those improvements, if there's warranted improvements, there is no cap on what we do. We try on assessments where the city pays 20%, and then it's assessed to the benefit district of 80%.
Okay.
But there's no overall cap, no, sir.
Right. So to echo the previous statement of like 30K in assessments, we moved into this house with that, and now we're more than that. So, it starts to seem like a burden on the homeowners after a while. So, we just keep adding more and more. When does it stop? Is sort of my thought on it.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Anyone additional? The gentleman is already moving to the microphone. You're next, sir. Okay. Good evening and welcome.
President Dardis, Commissioners, Ryan Gellner, 1030 51st Avenue West. Originally, I'd written a letter of protest and opposition. I just want to clear up a little bit of that letter. After some discussions with more engineering and understanding the beacons and understanding the distance of the crosswalks to the roundabouts, this is a good safety tool. And I want to clear that up in my original letter. After doing some research and dealing with safety, it is a good safety. However, this is not a high crash location. Roundabouts are mainly for high crash locations. This has had 4 minor crashes in 5 years. It's not a high crash location. To spend these dollars the way they are intended on something that's not a high crash location doesn't make a lot of sense. I think there are improvements that need to be made. There's a lot of kids that walk north to south, rather south to north, before school across that street, and at 3 o'clock every day after school, going the opposite direction. I think there are improvements that need to be made, and I would assume that the engineers have shared alternative options to all of you and countermeasures that are available that do work. As a homeowner in that neighborhood, this neighborhood has been strapped for a couple of years. We haven't been able to go south on Cheyenne Street because of a bridge. We haven't been able to go east and won't be able to go east on 52nd Avenue because of a bridge, and we won't be able to do that for another year. And now to take away another east-west thoroughfare and north-south for those coming from the second subdivision doesn't make a lot of sense at this time. If this plan does go through, I do ask that you look at all alternatives, the safer routes to school grants, some of those things, because we are talking about a school and moving people successfully and safely from one side to the other, that you take a look at all the options that are out there rather than just assessing the homeowners. I appreciate the time and the
Thank you,
thought.
Mr. Gillen. Any questions, commissioners? Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Gentleman in the hat, right here. Please state your name and address.
My name is Stephen Potter. I live at 5750 Deb Drive West.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say, I mean, there's a couple issues with this I'd like to bring up. One, in my conversations with Mr. Hanson here after the public meeting, the biggest issue with most people I've talked to and what seemed to be the big consensus in the last meeting at Liberty Elementary was the safety issue, especially for school children. And by his own admission, a four-way stop would be the safest option for kids. And also, it was pointed out in the meeting that the engineering department took no consideration of safety of pedestrians when they came up with this plan, which seems like a gross oversight when it's directly next to an elementary school with a lot of foot traffic. There's not a lot of, as the last person pointed out, a lot of vehicle issues there for accidents and safety. The roundabout at 52nd and Cheyenne has had way more accidents than our little intersection has had. Traffic is only an issue for a very short time in the morning as of now. And we are getting strapped with a ton of specials in a very short time in our neighborhood. And the big, like everyone said, we just want to pause and we want safety to be put first. The safety of the children especially before worrying about vehicles that aren't currently having a problem in any major way. I mean, there's a lot of options. It doesn't sound like anything else was considered in that meeting other than going straight to a roundabout just based on whatever analytics they use for traffic numbers. But the idea that nothing else was taken into consideration seems like there should be a pause so that the whole area can be looked at and not just number of cars at this one intersection and nothing else.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Commissioners, any questions of this gentleman? Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Please raise your hand. Please, the lady.
Hello, my name is Karen Johnson. I live at 5770 Deb Drive West. One of my biggest concerns, we have a daughter that goes to Legacy that does walk across that every day coming home from school. When we moved here to West Fargo, that was a concern about a major thoroughfare like that. There's plenty of cars that go both ways. I'm a teacher at Independence, and so I pass that every day going to school and watch my own kids over at Independence have a crosswalk there. There's a crosswalk there, and they make it safely across the street very well at Independence, and there's a lot of students that cross there. Where we're at on 52nd, it is a major thoroughfare. It does go to the interstate. There's people that come from farms that go through 52nd. So for it to all go on us homeowners, I don't think is as fair as it should be. I think some should come out of the city as well, due to the fact that there's more than just our little individual area that uses it. I don't know how far these assessments go out into the country. And the other thing is a four-way stop. If we're so worried about safety, why are we waiting a year and a half to 2 years to even get something going? If we're that worried about safety of the kids, there should be a four-way stop immediately out there. There's already 2 stop signs. What's 2 more to get up there? My biggest thing is the safety of my kids. I do appreciate that there is a blinking crosswalk there for right now. But if we're so worried about our kids, we should be doing something yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this topic? There's another hand up, please. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, and thank you very much. My name is Faith Carr, and I live at 5522 8th Street West. And raising our opposition on both points, both the roundabout structure as well as the increase in assessments. We've only been in our home 3 years, and in that time, our assessments have increased 13%. If you consider the cost of living increase, if you consider that on top of the regular real estate taxes that are paid, that's excessive. Because just the fact that we're trying to keep up with the cost of living and we're negative to that, you keep on increasing them. The value of our home, the value of a home on the average is 4 to 5% a given year. So now we're at 13% in 2 years just on assessments, that we're upside down. So a pause is something that I agree with, should be considered in what we're levying to residents in the city. And given that this is a thoroughfare that's used by people who visit, whether you're coming in from out of state or you're in Minnesota, or you're here for travel or business, you know, there's other considerations and tax bodies or tax entities that we could look at to offset the infrastructure costs. As far as the safety, I'm a retired teacher. And as a retired teacher, I'm very conscious and aware of the number of classrooms, daycares, and children that use Dakota Park, which is right behind our house. In the fall and in the spring, the school takes advantage of our park and walks entire classrooms down to Dakota Park. And I enjoy, I'm a retired teacher, hearing those voices and watching those children play. I don't know how a single classroom teacher who does take an entire class of 25 to 30 students can safely get 4 directions of traffic to pause to take an entire classroom across the street. So I would like the idea, the 4-way stop sign or the lights to be considered to give additional time for crossing for foot traffic for student safety. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Additional comments? Are there any additional comments on 2276? Are there any additional comments on 2276? Sorry, folks, I have to ask 3 times. Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. Mr. Hanson, would you step back to the microphone, please? Commissioners, any additional questions or comments? Mr. Anderson.
There's been a lot of mention in the emails that we got about either a stoplight or 4-way stop. What would happen if we choose to do that versus this roundabout? There are a lot of good points being brought up about the safety and why we haven't done anything now. One thing before you answer, apologize, is if anybody's on the PTA, I think it would be a good idea to have conversations with the school to look at a crossing guard program of some sort to help. But
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just some information, listening in on the comments that were made, a couple points for clarity is this project, the 2021 study, traffic study that was done, it was a traffic study. This project is, there's something that is needed there because even currently it functions at a level F for traffic on the northbound and the southbound in the peak hours. And it's going to get worse as it develops. This project was never precipitated because there was an abundance of crashes. It is not because we've seen a lot of crashes at that intersection that...
The classification of F, Mr. Hanson, is that because of the traffic volume? Or as we've all heard there's been 4 accidents. I think Mr. Gellner said there were 4 or 5 accidents in the last
5 years.
5 years.
I believe there's been.
So is it an F because of the traffic coming out of those south neighborhoods?
Yep,
Or what gives us an F?
Yep, it is the traffic volume, it's the queuing length and the amount of time that it takes somebody in a car to get through the intersection. And so it was a traffic study because of the amount of vehicles that use the intersection that this traffic study recommended the roundabout. With regards to the 4-way stops, we've heard loud and clear on a lot of emails, a 4-way stop is something that a lot of people want. There is warrants on 52nd, just like there's warrants for a signal, there's also warrants for a 4-way stop. Right now, there is no warrants to be able to put the stop signs on the north-southbound legs of that intersection, so we do have stop signs there. We heard loud and clear at the neighborhood meeting that a 4-way stop was desired. Where there are warrants to put in a 4-way stop, which we do not meet at this moment. If we were to proceed with a roundabout project at the end of this meeting, say the commission went forward with a roundabout project or a signal project for that matter, you're allowed to install a 4-way stop at that intersection as an interim traffic control device. So we've already talked to Public Works, and based off of the feedback that we got from the neighborhood meeting, if we move forward with a project as proposed, the intent is to put the 2 more stop signs up there to make that a 4-way stop basically immediately. So we would be putting those in. That's going to slow down the traffic flow at the intersection. And during peak hours, when there is the most traffic there, people are stopping, taking their turns, and it would be, in my opinion, safer for students to cross under a 4-way stop condition. Where it gets less safe is on non-peak hours, that's when people typically will run the stop signs. They're not forced to slow down because of traffic. They're the one person that's traveling along at 8 o'clock at night and wants to roll through the intersection and things like that. We did do, as far as what have we done for safety to date, in 2022, in the spring of 22, we did a pedestrian count. It wasn't a count of the amount of children, it was just the count of amount of pedestrians that were crossing it, and it was in excess of 200 people crossing that intersection. And as a result of that internal analysis that we did, we installed the rapid reflecting flashing beacons to make it safer for students to cross in the crosswalk. If we don't proceed with the roundabout project as proposed, or say a signal project or some form of a project that we're planning to institute, we would not have a warrant for a four-way stop at that intersection. And what we have out there right now is as much as we can give without that warrant of it. So I wanted to point that out.
Commissioner Anderson.
All right, so a couple questions. Who sets these warrants for these intersections? And who says that if we do approve this project, that who basically allows us to put a four-way stop if a project is approved today?
So the warrants for an intersection come from the Federal Highway Administration, who produce a manual of uniform traffic control devices. It's called the MUTCD. The MUTCD has been adopted by the North Dakota Department of Transportation, and that sets the 9 warrants, and to be warranted for either a signal or a four-way stop or a hawk system, which has also been asked. The hawk system is what you see on 8th Avenue in Moorhead near Concordia. Those all require warrants, and there's 9 warrants. You only have to meet one of those warrants to be able to warrant the installation of that device. So if we were to just meet one of those warrants, we could install a signal, but we do not meet warrants. We don't project that we would meet warrants for this particular intersection for it. The question that I heard you ask, I believe, is what happens if we just install it without a warrant? We can install things that are not with a warrant. It would not be something that would be looked upon favorably by the DOT, who does administer the funding that we go for these major corridors. We do submit, and we're in the process of submitting for some more grants on some major corridors. That's what we're using for the funding of the 9th Street Northeast project. We've also, we're looking at, Center Street, 9th Street Northwest, Cheyenne from 40th down to 52nd eventually, and also 52nd from Cheyenne to this intersection. However, I will say that that stretch of road on 52nd Avenue is one of the lower priorities. We're not even submitting that for funding now because we submit for what the greatest need is. And so eventually there will be a request for grant money through that program, which does fall under the purview of the DOT. And if we were to put up, for example, if we were to put up a signal at that intersection unwarranted, I'm sure we would get some correspondence not in favor of that from the DOT. However, when it comes down to us submitting for those grants in the future, we would have to obtain those grants, we would have to remove anything that we put in unwarranted right now. So if we put in a signal right now, and by the time that we would submit for that funding, we're probably looking 8, 9, 10 years down the road. It's not immediate because, again, we're just submitting for our highest needs. We could still submit for it, but we would have to include that we would be removing any unwarranted traffic control devices that we're installing currently.
Commissioner Olson.
If we would go ahead and
Commissioner Simmons.
put in a unwarranted traffic control, either a light or four-way stop, and there is an accident there, would the city be liable then because we installed something that was not warranted?
I would defer that to our attorney, Mr. Shockley.
Mr. Shockley is our city attorney.
Could you state that? I'm not.
If we put in, let's just say a four-way stop, and we don't meet any of the 9 warrants, and there was an accident, whether it be just vehicle, pedestrian, whatever, would the city then be held liable because we put in a traffic control that didn't meet any of the warrants?
Well, Commissioner Olson, first of all, you can't stop anybody from suing the city. We have insurance in place for those types of suits. Generally, the decision to place stoplights, stop signs at intersections is a discretionary decision by the commission, so likely the city would not be held liable in that situation as long as the professional engineer was acting in accordance with industry standards in designing it.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Commissioner Simmons, then
Thank you.
Commissioner George.
Thank you. Dan, first of all, we're not setting a precedent here because in the past, we've done unwarranted signal lights before and we haven't run into problems. But what I'm hearing from these citizens is that a pause, which means do nothing, or do something and don't be assessed for it. That's kind of what I'm hearing. So in my opinion, I would be for putting in 4-way stops, and because that's about the cheapest route. That's not going to cost us anything. That's just my opinion.
Commissioner George?
I mean, the 4-way stop seems to be what people are kind of asking more for. I mean, a signal is great, but it's expensive, and it seems like a 4-way stop, and maybe with some crossing guards would do the trick. I don't see any reason. Nobody wants the roundabout, and then the expense of the roundabout, nobody wants that. So I don't see any reason why we couldn't, like they said, like yesterday, put in a 4-way stop and maybe talk to the school about having crossing guards. It just seems so simple to me. I don't know why we don't just do that.
So you talk about the stop, or the warrant of over by Concordia, okay? So your traffic study, your foot traffic study was 200 people, and it wasn't school-age children. It wasn't at that. So why would we not have done that right across from the elementary school or at that intersection? I mean, why wouldn't that be part of the data?
As far as why wouldn't we have installed a?
If part of the criteria to meet warrant a crossing like that, push button, stop the traffic, and you have 200 that are just pedestrian crossing 52nd, why wouldn't we have included the data from the intersection where our young people are crossing? Would that not bump the numbers up significantly and maybe qualify for a warrant for that type of traffic control?
My understanding is we do not meet the warrant. The numbers that we counted do not meet a warrant. It's also concentrated. It's how many in what amount of time. I would have to check to see the study that we did do where we were just counting how many pedestrians crossed. As a result of that, we did do some modifications. We did install those rapid reflecting flashing beacons. We installed everything that we could without a warrant to be able to provide safety.
The person from MetroCog that did those studies lives in this neighborhood. I visited with her last week at the meeting, and she said she put out the counters in the strip. So she's a part of this resident group here.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I go back to if it was 200 people, pedestrians crossing, and didn't count at the elementary school from the Wilds 21st, 22nd, and 23rd edition, would that not bump those numbers up significantly that it may warrant a different traffic controlling?
When I say it didn't count the number of children, the number, like whether it was children, middle-aged people.
You didn't differentiate.
Yeah, it was just a total pedestrian.
You counted 200.
We did, if there was a child that crossed, they were included in that 200. Every pedestrian was counted. We just didn't differentiate based off of age. It was only a how many pedestrians are crossing study.
Okay. In the course of all of this, have we had a meeting with Legacy Elementary's PTA group?
We have not.
Okay. After all this discussion, might that be a possibility that we get on the PTA's agenda as well, in case some of these moms and dads that aren't here this evening, and gather some more data from those folks?
Yeah, especially with respect to what Commissioner Anderson said as far as the crossing guards. We've heard many people say, why can't we just get crossing guards out there? Well, the city doesn't force schools to employ people to do crossing guards. That is something from the school that would start with the PTA. I will say it's not like we haven't heard from the elementary school. We have heard that there's concerns with that intersection as far as the pedestrians. But again, this is based off of traffic need. I will say by installing a four-way stop there, we will slow down traffic in that intersection for it.
So when you say that we can do that as an interim, what type of time tape, what would considered a delay? Is that a 1-year deal? Is it a 2-year deal? Is it a 3-year deal?
If we have a plan in place and authorized, for example, if you put a signal in, it takes sometimes 16 to 20 months to get the posts delivered. Once you're moving forward with that project, then you do not need the warrant for a four-way stop. You're allowed to put them in as an interim traffic control device. And so basically, as far as the time frame goes, it's from whenever the commission would authorize us to proceed with the project till the point where we construct the project. Whatever that amount of time is in between the decision and construction would be the interim time that we would be able to put a four-way stop in unwarranted, because it in essence would be warranted during that interim time frame.
Commissioner Simmons.
But the problem you have is the signals aren't warranted either.
Signals are not warranted.
So then that's a moot point. What you just kind of, it's all not, if we want to do it, we just have to do it like we've done in the past years ago. We just said, hey, the safety is more important, and we did it. And like our attorney said, we can get sued regardless.
Yeah, and I will enter into the discussion that there is data out there showing that roundabouts are a safety measure for pedestrians. They are safe for pedestrians to cross. When it was mentioned that we didn't do any studies regarding any pedestrian safety, we knew that a roundabout is pedestrian safety. And again, going back to the 2021 study, the result of our traffic study that we paid their consultant with, that came back with, right now the intersection is operating poorly. It's going to operate less efficiently as more and more people move into the wilds and as that area gets developed. And then it's the level of service as far as people being able to make it through that intersection is going to slow down if we install the four-way stop, and it's going to continue to deteriorate over time until we do something, whether it's a signal or a roundabout. The study suggested a roundabout because a signal is not warranted. That was the recommend. Roundabouts would bring that to a level A service. People would have very little time in queue waiting to get in through the roundabout. So they do an amazing job of moving traffic, but they are very polarizing. There's people that hate them, and there's people that love them. We've gotten an unsolicited email from a gentleman outside of the district that is very unsupportive of roundabouts at these areas. He comes from an area where they have a lot of them, and he loves them, but as they're growing in number, people get more and more used to using them, get more comfortable in using them, and they become, eventually, sometimes they've become the preferred in those cities. The gentleman that spoke at the neighborhood meeting, Troy, he's a gentleman that owned a company that just did roundabouts for over a decade. And he said that there's a city that they implemented roundabouts in, and by the time that they were done installing them, if they brought a signal project forward, they would have a meeting where people were wondering, why the heck are we installing signals? Everybody wanted roundabouts. But that's a different culture there than what we have here right now. They're newer around here. They can be confusing for people that aren't as familiar with them. And then I do recall my discussion with Mr. Potter. I had mentioned to him that the downtown roundabout on Main over by the Veterans Bridge, I said, when I come into that, what I told him was, when I come into that roundabout, I'm looking for that gap in the space where I can pull my car into. And because I'm trained in roundabouts, I know that I need to look for pedestrians, and I make and it's something that's intuitive because I've been living in this world. But I said, I can see people that are not used to roundabouts. They need to know that they need to look for pedestrians, but we do have some safety measures incorporated into the roundabout design that would be, we would set the crossing area for the crosswalk off of the circle so that there would be at least one, if not two cars of queuing length, so people don't have to stop in the roundabout for somebody to cross. We're planning installing those rapid reflecting flashing beacons where they can push a button. It would light up to let people know that there's somebody crossing. So there are some safety features that we were going to go above and beyond with the design for it. But this is all just additional information with regards to that. And then the last thing that I would say is the gentleman mentioned that we're already, there's been some construction issues, and the ability to move traffic in the area has already been impeded with the Clay County Bridge going in. There's already 52nd Avenue closed off. Next year, the city of Fargo is going to be expanding the roundabout over on Cheyenne and 52nd. And the construction that we were proposing here would coincide with that project. The detour that the city of Fargo is going to put up takes everybody north on 9th. So our detour for our project would utilize the same detour that all of the traffic is going to have to be using anyways during construction. But we are proposing that we would construct this roundabout in phases, where we would be we would always have the ability for the traffic to get north on 9th, using that detour that they're going to have to be using as well, anyways, with the Fargo construction project. So, again, this is all just some additional information for you.
Mayor?
Commissioner Olson had his hand up first.
Couple of points. We do have a couple of roundabouts right next to some elementary schools in West Fargo, by the one in Brooks Harbor and one
At Freedom. Yep.
Have we had any issues?
No, we do have two instances in West Fargo, as you mentioned. Brooks Harbor Elementary has a roundabout right adjacent to it, as well as Freedom Elementary. They have a residential neighborhood surrounding it, and we have not had any, I've never been made aware of, and nor do I know of anybody that's made us aware that they've had issues with that. Fargo, at Osgood Elementary, they've got a roundabout just adjacent to that elementary school. They just built Davies High School. They put a roundabout right next to it. And there's actually literature out there that there was an example of that was a video that we played during the neighborhood meeting where there was actually a news story done on, I believe it was Blaine, Minnesota, where they've just installed 9 roundabouts, and they actually installed them near schools to make it more safe for the pedestrians to cross.
Commissioner Simmons and Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you. First of all, Dan, are we voting on anything tonight?
Yeah, they're in the packet. There is a resolution
Okay.
that would be passed that just states that because there was not over 50% of the area protested, that there would be a resolution to pass of insufficient protests. And then the second thing would be to authorize the engineer to prepare plans and specifications if we so move forward.
Okay, so Mayor, if you would allow me,
Commissioner Anderson has a point he'd like to make.
oh, I wasn't done
You gonna
yet.
make a motion?
I'd like to, but I want to make,
Okay, go ahead.
thank you. I'd like to make a recommendation first before the motion to the rest of the commission, that for now, we put up a 4-way sign with solar panels at nighttime so they can see them. And then we just do some more research and do more education. And, I'm not saying nix this, I'm saying for now, let's buy ourselves some time, pause, like they say, and put those 4-way stop signs up immediately, though.
You're talking with the blinking
The
lights?
blinking
or-
ones,
or-
correct.
That's an option for us. We just have to order them, and we don't have those on hand.
Do we
So
have like stop signs sitting out of Public Works right now just to put up in the,
we do have stop signs that we
because
can-
we're gonna be coming into winter, like the ground's getting cold. I think we need to put something up
Yep.
rather than, so Commissioner Anderson, if you want to make a motion, I will right now, or if you want to speak first.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna bring up that, or ask like how quickly we could get a 4-way stop out there. I like the idea of pausing. Like people brought up, this neighborhood has been special assessed a lot, and they're getting hit with a lot of construction. And I'd like to see a pause. And if it does come within 8-9 years to reconstruct 52nd, four-way stop is a heck of a lot cheaper to tear out than stoplights. And I think if it gets to that point, we could, if we don't do anything until then, we could look at the intersection at that point, I feel like. So if we have the option to do a four-way stop and we don't special assess anymore, which you guys will probably see in like 2 years if this project were done, but I would be in favor of pausing.
Thank you. Commissioner Olson.
Just want to make a comment that I feel your pain on special assessments. I live in Eagle Run. I moved in there in 2006, just 3 years after it began to develop. I've been hit with special assessments on Cheyenne Street, 32nd Avenue, 40th Avenue, some stormwater sewer projects, stormwater collection projects, all of that. I get it. If I had known that when I moved into a brand spanking new development before I bought, I probably wouldn't have. We constructed a brand new city south of Interstate. And as popular as it is, we have to pay for that stuff somehow. And everybody's gonna benefit from the improvements. And yes, your neighborhood is being special assessed right now. Mine was 10 years ago, big time too. So when you say it's been increased by 13%, we don't put a cap on increasing anybody's special assessments over the time. It goes project by project. And we don't just keep adding on to what you've been special assessed to keep adding on. It goes project by project. And we all, in the end, we all will benefit from it, but it is painful at the beginning. And I've been there, and I'm still paying on them. So that was just the one comment I wanted to make, that it's part of being in a brand new development. You get it. You get hit with it.
Anything else? Commissioner George.
Real quick, the audience may want to stick around for item number 5.
What is that? No. Mayor?
Commissioner Simmons.
Okay. At this time, I think I'd make a motion that we approve a four-way stop and that we get that up immediately. And then, again, I'm not delaying researching and educating into this stuff, but right now, for the sake of the kids, let's get that up here still this late fall. That'd be my motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded for a task order for basic services of a four-way stop to be placed at this intersection of 6th Street East and 23rd, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one, 9th Street West and 52nd Avenue West. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Olson.
Just a question. So by doing this, does this put us just a pause on further studies? Or are we still going to study how to improve the?
I think we still need to.
I just want to make sure that that's part of the motion, that we still continue to study how to improve the flow and the safety of this intersection.
Mr. Shockley, City Attorney.
Mr. Commission President, I was actually, after you're done voting on this, I was going to bring up the procedural question of what you wanted to do with this current improvement district.
John, would you move closer to the microphone?
Thank you, Mr. Commission President. I was actually going to bring up the procedural question after you're done voting, what you wanted to do with this current improvement district for the roundabout. You could go ahead and say you're going to terminate the improvement district. That wouldn't stop you from doing other things, but you should just put bookends on this. Otherwise, the improvement district is just hanging out there. So whatever you want to do, you could continue the improvement district. If you wanted to continue the improvement district, then you'd find that there was insufficient protest, but take no further action.
By continuing the improvement district, then staff can still work on alternatives? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, but they would be more limited to what's in a roundabout, because once you create your project scope.
Okay. Does that change the amendment or the motion that you want to make?
Actually, Mr. Commission President, I think if you want to handle it in 2 votes, this one and then deal with the procedural issue on the actual improvement district after you're done with this one.
Any further discussion on the motion? Four-way stop. Commissioner George.
I just want to have it absolutely clarified. So the motion is we're going to immediately put up a four-way stop, but continue to research plans
For,
We'll discuss that in a
I
second.
have to
Just
have
a
a
four-way stop.
procedural vote on that, too.
So this one is just the
Yes,
four-way stop?
yes.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now, to the second order of business of, Mr. Shockley pointed out to us, which is procedural, as to whether or not we continue with the resolution of the public necessity of this. So I need a motion
So,
as well. Commissioner Simmons.
so I want to make sure I understand this right. So we did the pause. Okay, that's the pause now. That's done. The four-way stop is going up, now we're pausing. That's what I heard. So now this next motion, John, is to, we can continue this, but we're not going to spend any money at this juncture, right?
Well,
Or
agree.
whatever the staff,
Well, I'm going to insist that we present in front of the PTA at that elementary school.
okay, yeah.
I think that's critical.
Or do we, I don't know the right term, dissolve District 2220, or 2276, and then we could bring it back up at a later time with a different number if we so desire to look at a roundabout or any other structure or a light?
Yeah, so you really have two options. If you approve the resolution finding insufficient protests, you could certainly pause the district after that, but you're really stuck with it's a roundabout.
Okay.
And so unless you want to go forward with a roundabout, the second option would be to go ahead and terminate the district. You can still direct staff to go back and look at a different project, but that would come under a new improvement district name. It just,
I'll make a motion to terminate the district then.
Second.
I have a motion to terminate District Number 2276, and I have a second by Commissioner George. Is there any further discussion?
Are we going to instruct staff to further research? Is that part of your motion?
Okay, yes, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I still want to research, I just want to, yeah, I want to terminate this district, but allow the staff to look at other alternatives. That's where I'm going with this, other alternatives, including the roundabout, if that's something that we have to have down the road. Does that make sense, Mr. Hanson?
It does. I would be cautioned as far as spending any taxpayer dollars to do further research on the intersection. There was 4 things looked at in the study that was done so recently. One was a do-nothing approach, which leaves the level of service where it is. The second option that was researched in that study was to install a 4-way stop sign, which it did not improve the level of traffic service at that intersection. And then it also discussed a signal option for the intersection, which is unwarranted and could potentially affect future funding. And then the roundabout, which was what was the preferred option in that study. We can try to think of another option, but I wouldn't want to spend any more taxpayer money on researching if a signal is warranted or if we should have a signal when we already know it's not warranted. We know that the 4-way stop isn't warranted, but if we're directed to put it in, the commission sets my priorities. I don't set the commission's priorities. Commissioner George made that very abundantly clear at the beginning. So I have no problems further looking into it and doing more research, but really those are traditionally the 4 options that we have. So unless we can think of a 5th option, we've already done the research. I think it's more of the project is just put on pause. We can put the 4-way stop in. We can see how traffic reacts to that. Maybe it's an accepted level of service from the neighborhoods over the next year, 2, 3. Maybe it happens where 3 years from now everything is built out and people come back and say, this is untenable, I need something done here. We can reinvestigate it. I don't think that it'll warrant a signal at that point, but that's when I would say when it's time to do something with the intersection, then I think we would basically reopen the books on a study to see if a signal is warranted, or we always know the roundabout is warranted and we can move forward with the project. But I really don't know of a project we can do short of what's already been studied.
Commissioner Anderson.
I appreciate you saying that because my question was going to be around prioritizing the project. Do we want staff to spend time studying more if there's anything more to study? You know, they're working on CIP and some other projects. I would want them to work on something that's going to drive some more of the strategic planning that we have moving forward, because we don't know, like, I think ideally, maybe, was my view, but if we were to look at this project on 52nd and include the intersection 8 to 9 years from now, I feel like putting time into it now wouldn't be a good use of taxpayer money. So,
I'll remind everyone that in 2026, 2027, there will be a 52nd Avenue Bridge crossing the diversion, and all of that land will be, that's between the West Fargo and the Horace diversion. In between is in our extraterritorial, and I've had a number of developers and/or landowners already start to talk to me about, how that might look in 2026 or 2027. So it's going to be a major arterial road that's going to be crossing the diversion. And, that being said, that even amps up the safety of these children even more, because these are going to be farm trucks or large trucks and all that construction that's going to be taking place. So, Commissioner
He already
Olson.
answered my question.
All right, Commissioner Olson, Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you. I guess when I say research, I was thinking more of a funding mechanism, because I'm hearing just as much as better than half the people saying they don't mind the roundabout, they just don't want to pay for it. So when I say research, I'm thinking, are there other funding options, mechanisms that we can look at that we haven't thought outside the box enough? That's all.
Yeah, and if I can add to the discussion, there's the standard grant that we've been going for and successful in obtaining some grant money for our major roadways. There has just recently been a new funding source that I was planning on bringing to the next commission meeting. It's forgive me if I don't get the name of it right, but it's basically the Flex Fund. It's additional money that's through the same program, basically, and what that does is it's a program that's set up to help communities pay the local share of federally funded projects. Now, this wouldn't be a federally funded project because we don't have federal funds going into it, but we were planning, if the project moved forward, to still apply for those Flex grant funds that we could put towards the project. Now, it's we don't know if we would qualify because there's no federal money coming into it, but it is a roadway that is on the federal classification system. So we're hoping that they might be able to take a look at this. We were hoping that they might take a look at this project and say this is a valid project that we wouldn't mind putting some of those funds into. That's, like I said, a brand new program. Outside of those two, it was brought up, the Safe Routes to School programs. Typically, those aren't for grandiose projects. It's more for your sidewalks, maybe a crossing, maybe a hawk system potentially, those type of things. So you could get some contributing money towards the sidewalk part of it, but they don't generally reconstruct roadways in that neighborhood or in that nature. But that flex funding is something that is brand new that we've been made aware of, that we were planning on going forth in requesting funds for that. So I guess that would be a good question, is do we want to apply for those funds given that we're potentially dissolving the district? Dissolving the district doesn't mean we can't move forward with a project. We could still request funds for that project, see if we get them, and then come back at that point. But it would just mean that we're, as Mr. Shockley stated, we would dissolve the assessment district. So anything in the future would be a brand new item that I would bring to the commission.
Okay.
I have a motion and a second on the floor regarding District Number 2276 to absolve the assessment district. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Mr. Hanson. To all the neighborhood folks that were here this evening, thank you. And thank you for attending on November 14th as well. It gives us great guidance. We appreciate you. Item number 4 is District Number 2280, a roundabout on 23rd Avenue East and 6th Street East. Mr. Dan Hanson, City Engineer for the City of West Fargo, will be having a discussion regarding conduct the resolution of necessity in a public hearing, approve a resolution of insufficient protest, and a task order for basic services, and direct an engineer to prepare plans and specifications.
Thank you, Commissioner, President Dardis, and Commissioners. Yeah, this is another roundabout project that was proposed on the intersection of 6th Street and 23rd Avenue. That's the southwest corner of the Costco property for people to know. We're at the same point in the process, if for that project process handout, would be that if we were to proceed with the project, we would be approving the resolution in the packets and directing the engineer to prepare the plans and specifications. And again, I'll go into the history of that and then provide some more updated detail on the correspondence that we've received. We did have a 2021 traffic study that was completed for Veterans Boulevard that included the analysis of the 23rd and 6th Street intersection in it. And then also there was a 2023 traffic study that was completed specifically for the 23rd Avenue corridor. And in both of those studies, the recommended procedure was to install a roundabout at that intersection. In September 23rd, we created the Improvement District 2280 and we approved the engineer's report. October of 2023, we authorized a resolution of necessity, which again set up today's meeting and hearing. Bringing us forward to today, it was more of a commercial area assessment district for this project. There was 15 property owners that were sent letters, and the total number of official protest letters that we received were 3, but they were very large. In addition to that, we did receive correspondence from another one of the property owners that wasn't an official letter of protest, but wanted to put that project on pause as well for more discussion. Again, that correspondence was outside of the 3 official letters of protest that we did receive. The handout that I gave prior to the commission meeting shows a map that shows where the official protest letters came from. And in analyzing that data on the bottom of that map, it shows that 51.8% of the area of the parcels that have protested the creation of the improvement district. That is a sufficient protest to bar us to use special assessments to fund the improvement. And so it doesn't mean the project can't move forward, but we are barred from using special assessments to fund the project as proposed. In your packet, as noted, there was a resolution in the packet of insufficient protests. At the time that the packets were created, we did not have sufficient protests. We did receive the final protest on Friday. That did take us over that 50% area. So by the letter of the law, we cannot move forward with this project and special assess it. We can, however, move forward with the project if we do deem it to be necessary, as called out in the 2 traffic studies that we've done. So what we would need to do tonight at the end of this would be for the commission to make a motion that accepts the protests and noting that they represent over 50% of the land area within the improvement district. And then I would entertain any discussion from after hearing that information.
Please, Commissioner George.
2 quick questions on this one. In the letters of protest, did they specifically, obviously they are against the special assessments, were they specifically against the roundabout on this one as well? And can you refresh us on how much this project was going to cost?
I don't have an exact dollar amount
Close ballpark.
in front of me, but I believe this was about 1.4 million, somewhere in there. I can get you that
No, that's close
number,
enough.
but it was not as expensive as the other one, for one thing. And then it was all of the above as far as why. Obviously, there was, for example, Costco was one of the ones that they mentioned that the reason that we're going to be doing this is because we're fearing that the rest of the development to the west of us is going to develop, and that's going to create more traffic at this intersection. So they're the reason that's causing this project to happen. It's not them. We also received a letter of protest from the area that hasn't been developed yet that told us that it's all of Costco's traffic that's causing the problems, so it's not them. So they were both pointing the finger at the other person, saying that it is their reason that we need the project. And then the other one just didn't feel that they received enough benefit to be they protested the specials, not necessarily the roundabout. There, and I would say that the additional correspondence that we received from a developer that didn't officially protest was questioning the design of a roundabout. Is that going to enable trucks to get around it? Trucks that are accessing Costco, are they going to be able to navigate it? They had some concerns with that as well. So that, if I was to just by memory summarize the protests, that
That answered my question well, thank you.
Anyone else? So again, what we're looking for here is to dissolve District Number 2280 this evening, or if the commission should decide that they're going to foot the entire bill, then we find sales tax revenues or whatever the case to pay for it ourselves. Commissioners?
First, we're looking for a motion to approve that there was sufficient protest, right?
Well, we do have a public hearing that was on the agenda for tonight. So I believe we should still proceed with that public hearing before any motions and things of that nature, just in case there's somebody here to speak on that. And then after we come out of that, I would think that we would do the same process where the first thing that we would do is obviously make the motion to accepting the protest and noting that it is over 50% of the assessment district. So that doesn't necessarily dissolve the district, but I think that would be a separate motion. And then another motion would be to dissolve the district, and we can bring the project back as a project on its own basis.
Actually, once you find that there's sufficient protests, the district is done.
Oh, so there wouldn't need to be a second?
No.
Okay, so we just would need the motion to dissolve, or to accept the protests.
We are now going to exit the regular agenda and are going to move into the public hearing on District Number 2280. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak at this issue? Please come forward, state your name and address. Good evening.
Good evening, Austin Morris. Our business where I work is at on 23rd Avenue East, 323rd Avenue East. Today I'm representing a client of ours that we work to acquire land in this area, Dakota Medical Foundation. And I would say both from Dakota Medical Foundation's perspective as well as from other neighbors' perspective, not necessarily protesting the specific need or desire to institute a roundabout to take care of traffic as well as a potential signal just to the east, but more so on the special assessments portion of it. In the example of Dakota Medical Foundation's parcel of property, 21 acres, with nothing currently constructed there. They were proposed to be assessed $443,000 of the roundabout project. And as an experienced traveler within that area, Enclave's offices are just west, probably about 1.5 miles. And just on my way to this meeting, the stacking outside of Costco there was probably about 24 cars deep on 6th, and probably about 20 cars deep on Blue Stem. And so we understand that there's a need to figure something out there. Just from Dakota Medical Foundation's perspective, the challenge is the assessment and the benefit. And this is unique in that would there be a need for a traffic change on that intersection, if not but for Costco's level of traffic? So those are some of the questions. When we'd done traffic studies on a number of other areas, on a number of other projects as necessitated by either city or the project type, we understand that office, single-family residential, multifamily, and then retail have different levels of traffic, different quantities of visitors, regardless of the size of lot or size of building. And in the case of a big box, very high volume producer, it's tremendously different than any of those other uses. Just as an example, the average quantity of visitors to a Costco on a per-day basis is in excess of 4,000. The average sales volume of a Costco is 192 million. Sales tax revenue from a City of West Fargo perspective would be 2.5% of annual sales. So not arguing that Costco is an incredible retail option in West Fargo. Many people love Costco. We love that Costco is here. It's probably more so in this unique case of not being a typical improvement district, where if we were expanding 23rd because traffic generally increased as a result of a broad base of users, I think the folks included in this would be more collectively understanding of this. So I'll stop there. Be happy to answer any questions, but primarily the assessment portion is kind of unique in this case. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Questions, commissioners? Anything for Mr. Morris? Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak regarding district number 2280? Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on 2280? Public hearing is closed on 2280. We're back in the regular agenda. Commissioners? Commissioner George.
I have another question for Dan. Okay, obviously, people seem like in agreement. There's traffic issues on this one. So maybe we talked about this. Can you refresh my memory on a stoplight versus a roundabout in this location?
Yes, and just to clarify, earlier you had asked me the cost of the project, and I was foggy on my memory. We checked it out. It was proposed at $2,050,000. It was quite larger than what I had mentioned earlier, so I did fact check that, and it is $2,052,000 is what the engineer's report showed. So I apologize for misremembering that number earlier. There is in the traffic study, they did look at a signal. What I can say is that a traffic signal is warranted for this intersection. We are allowed to put in a traffic signal. Where it's a roundabout is better a roundabout doesn't have as much queuing because we have a traffic signal at Veterans. We'll have a traffic signal. We currently already have bid out and awarded a project to install a traffic signal at Blue Stem and 23rd, and that'll be installed with a completion date of September of next year. So there is a signal already going in at Blue Stem, and now just to the west of that, we would have basically back-to-back-to-back signals, which is not unheard of in high traffic corridors, things like that. Not the most desirable, but it's also it's not a game breaker as far as that goes. So we are warranted to put a signal in that intersection.
And how much would that cost?
We've bid out signals and generally speaking about $1 million with some intersection improvements. So it is considerably cheaper. Now, over the course of the lifespan of a signal versus a roundabout, once a roundabout is constructed, there's little to no maintenance needed for that. With signals, you're updating everything. You're paying people to do the timing of it. You have to upgrade and update the equipment and the controllers and things like that. So if you take a look at a cost evaluation over time of signals, in the end, they're more expensive than a roundabout, but up front, it's considerably cheaper.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyone else? Additional questions for Mr. Hanson?
And just to reiterate, with the protestation of the special assessments, the project can move forward, and the project can move forward with a roundabout, it can move forward with a signal. Under the current proposed assessment district, we are not allowed to perform or proceed with this assessment district.
So the first part of the motion should be, though, that we accept the sufficient protests. Is that not correct?
Yeah, it would be making a motion accepting the protests and noting that they represent over 50% of the land area within the improvement district.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded. We have a motion to accept the 51% of protests with regard to an assessment district for 23rd Avenue East and 6th Street East. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Anderson?
Just one quick question. When would we be talking financing or payment for funding for this project?
As far as the
Well, now it's not special assessed, so I know it's like sales tax, but if it's economically driven, can we make a case for economic development sales tax being funding at least part of this project?
Mr. Shockley?
Thank you, Mr. Commission President. Once you find that there's sufficient protests, the improvement district is done, you can certainly direct the staff to look at different funding sources for whatever project you want out there. It's just this project will be done. We could certainly look at if there's economic dollars available for it.
I would bring back a brand-new project, whether it's roundabout signal, whatever the commission would like to, I guess, give me their input on, and I would bring it back under the assumption that we would fund it a different way.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Scott, did you have something that you'd like to add?
No, thank you. They've covered it. But now that I'm talking, just give me a couple seconds here. Just to, we did have a couple weeks ago, we had a capital improvement workshop. And so just like with the prior project, I believe this one could be added to that CIP strategic planning, where we would look at alternative scopes along with alternative funding sources. So that would be the natural progression. Unless there is something very specific the commission directs us to do tonight, we will include it with that capital improvement planning process.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Commissioner Olson?
I just want to be clarified here. After this vote, there's no other vote tonight on 2280 because it was basically, it's done, right?
Correct.
There isn't no more vote to go back and decide if we're going to fund it ourselves at this time. We'll do that at a later date if it's so warrant. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding what we're doing here.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay.
Anyone else? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 5 is District Number 2261, a 2024 mill and overlay, various neighborhoods. Approve amended engineer's report and amended resolution declaring a work necessity. Mr. Dan Hansen, City Engineer for the City of West Fargo.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. Excuse me. This is a project that was originally brought forth in February of this year, and at that meeting, we did pass an engineer's report and we did pass a resolution of necessity. That set public hearing date for March 20th of this year. That did not happen. The project was basically put on pause and moved to the intent of having that construction in 2024. So I'm bringing it forward now because it would be time to move forward with design to get this project moving forward. What this project is it targets, and I've presented a couple times a PowerPoint that shows over the life cycle of a roadway, it starts to deteriorate and there becomes a hinge point where you can do some work to the roadway in the form of a mill and overlay that revitalizes the roadway and provides additional lifespan of the roadway. There was a number of different areas that would be included, and I believe in the packet it does show those assessment districts where the mill and overlay would be intended. The target areas for these roadways are all roadways that have been constructed within the past 15 years, and they are there's been trench settlement, there's been other things, some deterioration of the roadways. There would still be some curb replacement, and obviously anytime you're doing a mill and overlay through the ADA laws, we would need to reconstruct all of the pedestrian ramps that are out of compliance with ADA standards. So where it's proposed, and also based off of when we presented this at the commission workshop last week, it is being brought back, proposed at an 80% assessment, excuse me, just for the local mill and overlay costs, which would be the actual milling of those streets, the overlaying of those streets, the curb and gutter that would need to be removed and replaced to fix any settlements. And those are the things that would be included in the assessment costs. Things that are not included, they would be included in the project, but not included in the assessment costs would be the ADA ped ramps that we would reconstruct in the project. That would be a 100% city cost, as well as there is some work to be done on some of the regional roadways, specifically 9th Street and 36th Avenue, that we would intend to just fund out of 100% city costs. So the projected cost for this project is estimated at $8,390,000 based off of a feasibility study that was that we received from our consultant. I guess I would just open it up for any questions. Again, this has been presented a couple times, so I'm.
Commissioner George.
So real quick, since we have an audience, can you scroll through all 3 of the slides with the neighborhoods?
Sure, yep. You can see, I'll just go through without discussing, but I'll go through them slowly so that they can see where these, and Chief Nielsen's going to turn the screen hopefully.
Thank you, Chief.
I'll move back to the first one.
Dan, I'm sorry, Mayor. I apologize. I don't think any of these areas are where these individuals live anyway, is it? This is all north of them, isn't it?
There is crossover.
This one could potentially.
This is north of 32nd on the first map.
Yep.
Okay.
There is some overlap between the previous project that we were talking about, and
This
that would
one
be on
is
the
west
west
of
side.
Cheyenne and south of 40th.
It's west of Veterans and north of 32nd on the first map. The second map that's up there now is on 40th, north of 40th Avenue, and again, west of Veterans Boulevard.
Correct.
Okay? The third map is north of 52nd and west of Cheyenne.
And you can see there are some of the historically first developments of the wilds that are included in this assessment district. They were also included in the assessment district that we had proposed for the 9th and 52nd roundabout project.
Nothing south of 52nd Avenue is included in this map,
That is correct.
just north.
Right.
South of 40th, north of 52nd, west of Cheyenne.
Cheyenne.
And just for public information, these maps are available in packet online, so.
So have you determined what a unit is going to be assessed?
Based off of the current estimates, the equivalent unit would be just shy of $4,000, be $3,994 is what the feasibility report stated. And that would be intended to be assessed over a 25-year period, which is our standard assessment term, which would result in approximately $312 per year added on to the yearly payment for their.
And that's at an 80-20 split
That's
between
correct, yep.
the city of West Fargo and the assessment district participants. And all the improvements of the ADA stuff at the crosswalks and the like, that is 100% financed by the city and a grant.
Correct. The city would have a total estimated cost of $3,130,000 proceeding with this project, and the special assessed amount would be $5,260,000.
So
We're hoping we're conservative with those estimates, but you don't want to start low and end up high. You'd rather start with a conservative estimate and hopefully come in under that number.
Can you tell me how many units total there are in these 3 areas? I just want to help the folks that do any math that they want to try and do.
I do not have that number in front of me. However, I do know that an equivalent unit would be 1 for any single-family residential, but there's also multifamily that's included in the district, which is 0.6. It was what it was, what their assessed rate would be.
Commissioner Simmons.
Just a comment. I think that with this project, if we don't do this now, they will be paying much, much more down the road. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah,
because of what we know already, what it's like in the core area and on both sides of the, the east and the west, east especially. is bad, Meadow Ridge, and so this one I definitely encourage to do.
Yep. You can see just across the road over in Fargo, there was a lot of, a lot of mill and overlay projects that happened this year. That's basically if people have been drove through those projects, they got a chance to see what our project would basically be as well. There's little to no drivability impacts with the mill and overlay project. You're able to drive on a milled street. It would just be right after the asphalt's laid down, or if we have some concrete that crosses a roadway or something like that. They'd be temporary construction inconveniences, but not a shut down the street for 2 months type of an inconvenience. It would be more sporadic during the paving process.
Commissioner George?
Is there any way we can break this project down into different sections? Because we have the ADA component and the other component that was 100% city, and then we have the component that is special assessed to the public. Is there any way to separate those out on separate votes? Like,
Can you see this breakdown, Commissioner George?
Back up
Right
on
here.
your screen.
What I would say is you can't do one without the other.
Yeah, you can't do one.
okay, so no, there's a question.
Yeah, it is an all or nothing because by law, if you do a mill and overlay, you have to redo the ped ramps.
Okay.
City Attorney John Shockley.
Thank you, Mr. Commission President, and just kind of bring everybody back to the procedural issue. You're not actually voting to go forward with the project tonight. Just like with every other project, you would be voting for resolution necessity, which gets published, and then letters go out. You still have to get through the protest period before you can proceed with the improvement. So it's not an up or down vote tonight on the improvement district. It's proceeding to publish the amended resolution of necessity.
Correct, and this resolution does set a date for this, the same type of public hearing we had would be set for January 8th of next year. We'd send the letters out, we would be able to receive the same letters of protest and the same process as what we just went through with the other two projects.
Commissioner Anderson.
A question, then a comment. What is your anticipated timeline for the CIP, for 2024 CIP?
The latest I would want to have it in front of you is in June.
Okay. I think the one thing here is we're not locking ourselves into 80-20. You know, we had a discussion, this was one of them, correct, last week?
Yes.
About funding the project. I'm not in favor of this project if we do an 80-20 split. You know, we're asking these people to pay a lot. They've been, everybody's been assessed a lot. So that's where I want to, have those conversations, see what we can do to lower. So if we're not locking ourselves into an 80-20 split, then
Correct.
I'm a little bit more comfortable moving forward with this portion of it, but just making aware that that's a concern of mine, and I think we all know that.
Absolutely. And the letters would be mailed out with the 80-20 split. Historically, mill and overlays have been assessed at 100%, but as we talked at the special commission meeting last week, the intent was not to move forward with 100% of special assessments with that. The 80-20 is what has been presented, and that's probably the high water mark for this commission to move forward with the project's special assessments. When we get into as what Commissioner Anderson is stating, is we're going to have an overall comprehensive CIP with some workshops where we're going to be able to paint a picture of what the next 5 years looks like with the intended projects and what our expenditures on each of these type of projects is going to do to us as a ripple effect down the road. And so if we get to the point where we decide during the CIP process, for example, say we went to a 60-40 or a 50-50, passing this tonight does not set the 80-20 in place in perpetuity. We can come back based off of discussions and workshops and the overall CIP to come up with a preferred method for mill and overlays. And when we do the final assessments and their certifications, they go in front of the Special Assessment Commission and back in front of this commission to approve. And we can change that special assessment to a different ratio, just not higher than what we're presenting tonight. And I just heard John think.
No, this is just a clarification. This is an improvement district. It's not an assessment district. assessments and financing are set by the Special Assessment Commission. You could assess at a later date 100% if you wanted. You could assess 30% if you wanted. Just want to make it very clear that's a decision that's left to the second part of the process. This is the process to create the improvement districts.
Mr. Shockley, you're a great advisor, but don't ever say 100% assessment. We got this many in the crowd.
I understand. I just want to make.
Please,
I tried that last week too, John.
I just want to make sure you're aware of your rights as a city
We are,
commission.
thank you, Mr. Shockley, for the clarification. You know, there's some data that I recently asked Mr. Hansen for. In 2022, their total cost of projects were $17,613,000. Of that, $11,326,912 were grants and assessments that were applied to that 17, and the capital improvement sales tax was $6,286,000. In 2023, that was drastically different. Sales tax, we used $16,462,000 out of 19,000 total dollars that was spent. So grants and assessments was only 3,000. So to 3 million, excuse me, thank you, 3 million. To Commissioner Anderson's point, it has been a policy of the city of West Fargo and of this commission. Previously, they didn't have a policy really where it was a solid 20%, where the city would absolutely commit sales tax dollars. So the dialogue that's going on because of inflation and what COVID has done and what workforce has done, everything's gone up so dramatically, it's just amazing. So to Commissioner Anderson's point is that there's possibility that we take a look at how the city works with the sales tax dollars that we collect and how we assess things, that we may change that ratio. We could do less projects per year if the city commits more money. And of course, as all of you have pointed out this evening, we have, as a commission, have to be sensitive to the assessments in some of these newer neighborhoods like you live in, is that 1, 2, 3. Now, we have developed or purchased a software, am I not correct, Mr. Scott? That now on these assessment districts, we can actually do an overlay on those districts. So when the young gentleman in the back there asked whether or not there was a cap on it, our software will allow us to map out those assessment districts, whether it's streets or sewer or those types of things. So that's a great tool for us on the commission and for staff to work with. So you are aware, we are cognizant of that, and that is part of the research and the dynamics that we use, just so you all understand that. So where are we at on this one, folks? Mark?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Simmons, excuse me.
That's fine. I'll make a motion to approve District 2261.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. I have a motion and a second to approve District Number 2261, to approve the amended engineer's report and amended resolution declaring a work necessity. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries on a 4-to-1 vote.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Item number 6. At this time, we are going to adjourn the regular agenda and the meeting. The West Fargo City Commission will be going into an executive session pursuant to North Dakota Century Code 44-04-19.1 and Section 44-04-19.2 for attorney consultation with the North Dakota Reserve Insurance Fund Litigation Counsel. So we stand adjourned. We'll be in special.
Sorry, Mr. Commissioner.
Mr.
President.
Shockley.
We need a motion and a second and a vote to go into executive session.
So moved.
Motion.
Vice versa.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? We are in an executive session. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming this evening.